While American bombs were still falling on Iran, while U.S. service members were on the ground in harm's way, Congress voted to try to shut it all down. House Democrats just introduced and voted on the Iran War Powers Resolution, a direct legislative attempt to strip President Trump of his authority to continue military operations against Iran unless Congress explicitly authorizes it. And here is what nobody on your social media feed is telling you. This is not just about Iran. This is not just about Trump. This is about a constitutional battle that has been brewing for over 50 years, a battle over who actually has the power to send your sons and daughters to war, the president or the Congress. And the answer, the real answer, is going to shock you, because the Constitution is not as clear on this as either side wants you to believe. Before I break this down, I need to say something directly to you. If the people around you are arguing about whether Trump is right or wrong, whether Democrats are heroes or traitors, without understanding the actual constitutional law behind any of it, they're arguing about the wrong thing entirely. And if nobody in your life is breaking down what is actually written in the Constitution, what Article Y actually says, what the War Powers Resolution actually does, and what it means for every American family with someone in uniform right now, that is exactly why Senate Decoded exists. Hit subscribe right now. Turn on every notification, because this story is moving by the hour, and you cannot afford to be the last person in the room to understand what your government is actually doing. This is not left. This is not right. This is the truth decoded. Let us get into it. Let us start at the beginning. Because most people who are screaming about this on both sides could not tell you in plain English what the Iran War Powers Resolution actually is or what it would actually do. Here is what it is in plain English. House Democrats introduced a resolution that, if passed, would have required President Trump to terminate the use of any United States armed forces against Iran unless that military action was explicitly authorized by a vote of Congress. Explicitly authorized. That means no more presidential discretion, no more commander-in-chief authority, no more acting first and reporting to Congress later. Every bomb, every strike, every deployment of American military force against Iran would have to be voted on and approved by the full Congress first. Now, did it pass? No, it did not pass. House lawmakers split almost entirely along party lines. Nearly every Republican voted against it. A small number of Democrats also broke with their party and voted against it. But here's why this vote matters even though the resolution failed. Because the fact that it was introduced at all, the fact that it received a significant number of votes, the fact that it forced every single member of the House of Representatives to go on record. Yeah, that is a massive political and constitutional development that will shape this conflict going forward. A failed vote in Congress is never just a failed vote. It is a statement, it is a warning, and it is a preview of what is coming. Now, I want to introduce you to the central figure in this story, because understanding her position, really understanding it beyond the headlines, is essential to understanding what is actually at stake here. Representative Pramila Jayapal, Democrat from Washington State, one of the most progressive members of the House of Representatives, and one of the most vocal defenders of the Iran War Powers Resolution. Now, before you decide whether you agree with her or not, I want you to hear something that she said that most of her political opponents completely ignored. Jayapal told Fox News Digital, and I want you to hear this clearly, I spoke out against Biden as well. I spoke out against every Democratic and Republican president who tried to go to war without authorization, because I don't think it should be partisan. It's about our Article 1 power. She even specifically referenced Joe Biden's 2021 airstrike on an Iranian-backed militia in Syria and confirmed she spoke out against that too. Now, you may completely disagree with her position on this. You may believe Trump was absolutely right to act, but what Jayapal is raising, the constitutional question, that question does not belong to the left or the right. It belongs to every single American. Because here's the question she is really asking. Should any single president, Republican or Democrat, have the unilateral power to take this country to war? That question will outlast this conflict. It will outlast this president. And the answer this Congress gives, or refuses to give, will set a precedent for every military action America takes for decades to come. All right, this is the section most news channels skip entirely because it requires actually explaining the law. But this is exactly what Senate Decoded is here to do. Article 1 of the United States Constitution, that is the section that establishes Congress. And Article 1, Section 8 gives Congress the specific power to, and I am quoting the actual Constitution here, declare war. 2 words, declare war. Congress declares war. That is written directly into the founding document of this nation. Article 2 of the Constitution establishes the presidency. And Article 2, Section 2 designates the president as, quote, Commander-in-Chief of the Army and Navy of the United States. Commander-in-Chief. The president commands the military. Now, do you see the tension? because the founders created it deliberately. They gave Congress the power to declare war, the formal official decision to enter armed conflict, but they gave the president command of the military, the operational authority to direct forces once in the field. The problem? Neither side of that equation has ever been willing to fully respect the other's authority, and every president since Harry Truman has used military force without a formal congressional declaration of war. Korea, no declaration of war. Vietnam, no declaration of war. Iraq in 1991, Congress authorized it but did not formally declare war. Afghanistan after September 11th, authorized but not declared. Iraq in 2003, authorized but not declared. Syria, Libya, Somalia, Yemen. The United States of America has not formally declared war since World War II, and yet American soldiers, sailors, airmen, and Marines have been sent into combat in over a dozen conflicts since then. This is not a new problem, but Iran, given the scale of military action already taken, may be the conflict that finally forces a resolution, or breaks the constitutional framework entirely. In 1973, in the aftermath of the Vietnam War, Congress tried to fix this problem. They passed the War Powers Resolution, and it is one of the most important and most ignored pieces of legislation in American history. Here's what it does in plain English. The War Powers Resolution requires the president to notify Congress within 48 hours of committing U.S. armed forces to military action, and it gives the president 60 days to conduct that military action, with a 30-day withdrawal period before he is required to get congressional authorization or pull the troops out. 60 days. That is the window. After 60 days, under the law, the president must either get Congress to authorize the conflict or end it. Sounds simple enough, right? Here's the problem. Every president since 1973, every single one, has argued that the War Powers Resolution is an unconstitutional restriction on their authority as commander-in-chief. Every president has complied with the notification requirement when it was politically convenient, and almost none of them have accepted that Congress has the authority to force them to stop a military operation. The Supreme Court has never definitively ruled on the constitutionality of the War Powers Resolution, which means this 53-year-old law exists in a kind of constitutional gray zone, referenced constantly, enforced almost never, and challenged by every administration regardless of party. Democrats who voted for the Iran War Powers Resolution are essentially arguing the 60-day clock is ticking. Congress needs to weigh in now. Before this escalates further, Republicans who voted against it are arguing the president has the authority and the responsibility to protect American interests abroad. Tying his hands in the middle of an active military operation is dangerous and reckless. Both sides have a legitimate constitutional argument, and the American people deserve to understand both of them before they pick a team. Now let us give equal time to the Republican argument, because it is a serious argument, and it deserves to be heard clearly and completely. Republicans who opposed the Iran War Powers Resolution made several core arguments, and they are worth understanding in detail. First, they argued that the president must retain flexibility to respond to foreign threats and protect U.S. personnel and interests abroad. In a world where threats move at the speed of a missile, where a decision may need to be made in minutes, not months, requiring a congressional vote before every military action could mean American lives are lost while lawmakers debate procedure. Second, they argued that voting to restrict the president's military authority during an active and volatile national security situation sends a dangerous message to America's adversaries. If Iran, or Russia, or China, or any other hostile nation sees that the U.S. Congress is trying to constrain the American military during an active conflict, it could embolden them to escalate. Third, they criticized the timing. Some Republican members were particularly pointed in their criticism of Democrats for what they called second-guessing military decisions during a sensitive moment overseas. The argument being, there is a time for congressional debate and a time for national unity. And when American forces are actively engaged, that is not the time to vote against the commander-in-chief. Now, here is what Senate Decoded wants you to notice about these arguments. Every single one of them is about practicality, about strategy, about what works in the real world. None of them directly address the constitutional question. None of them say, here is why the president has the legal authority to conduct this war without congressional authorization. They say, here is why it is dangerous to try to stop him now. That distinction between a practical argument and a constitutional argument is one of the most important things you can understand about how power actually works in Washington. Now, I want to go back to something Congresswoman Jayapal said that I think deserves much more attention than it has received. She told Fox News Digital, and these are her exact words, that the U.S. action in Iran is a much bigger war with no imminent threat. She also said, there are real troops on the ground here in a way that wasn't the case in Syria. Let us decode those two statements separately, because each one is significant. Statement one, a much bigger war. Jayapal is comparing this to the U.S. involvement in Syria, and she is saying, in her assessment, what is happening in Iran is categorically larger in scale and consequence. She is warning that the long-term implications of this conflict have not been fully reckoned with. Statement 2, no imminent threat. This phrase is legally critical. Under Article 2 of the Constitution, the president does have inherent authority to respond to an imminent threat to the United States without congressional authorization. This is the legal basis most presidents use to justify quick military action. But Democrats are arguing, and Jayapal is making this case explicitly, that Iran did not pose an imminent threat to the United States at the time these strikes were ordered. And if that argument is correct, then the constitutional justification for acting without Congress is significantly weaker. The White House will argue, and has argued, that Iran's decades of funding terrorism, its nuclear ambitions, its threats against American allies and personnel, and its role in conflicts across the Middle East absolutely constituted a threat to American interests. The president acted within his authority. Emphasize. What you are watching right now is not just a foreign policy debate, it is a fundamental argument about what kind of country America is, and who gets to decide when its military goes to war. Here is a detail that most coverage of this vote completely buried, and it tells you something very important about the political reality inside the Democratic Party right now. A small group of Democrats broke with their own party and voted against the Iran War Powers Resolution. Now, why does that matter? Because it tells you that even within the party that introduced this resolution, there was not a unified front. Some Democratic members clearly felt that this was the wrong move, either the wrong time, the wrong strategy, or the wrong message to send to the world while American forces are actively engaged. Think about what it takes for a member of Congress to vote against their own party leadership on a high-profile resolution during a national security crisis. That is not a small thing. That is a member going on record, publicly, saying, I disagree with where my party is going on this. Pause. And it signals something else, too. It signals that there are Democrats in the House who are worried about the political optics of appearing to side against American military action in the middle of a conflict, especially in competitive swing districts where their voters may strongly support the operation in Iran. Pause. This is what political scientists call a wedge vote. A vote specifically designed not necessarily to pass, but to force members of the opposing coalition to choose between political safety and constitutional principle. And the Democrats who broke ranks tell you exactly where that wedge is starting to split. Emphasize, pay attention to those Democrats, because in the months ahead, as this conflict evolves, the cracks that appeared in this vote will get wider, not smaller. I want to step back from the constitutional law and the political maneuvering for a moment, because behind all of this, behind the Article 1 arguments and the War Powers Resolution and the party line votes, there are real people, real American families. Jayapal said something in her interview that I think every American needs to sit with, regardless of where you stand politically. She said, there are real troops on the ground here, real troops, real people, sons and daughters, husbands and wives, brothers and sisters, men and women who raised their right hand and swore an oath to defend this country. We already know 6 of them came home in flag-draped coffins from Kuwait. The constitutional debate about who authorizes war is not an academic exercise. It is not a talking point for cable news. It is the legal framework that determines whether your family member gets deployed, whether they come home, whether the conflict they are sent into has a clear mission, a clear exit strategy, and the full backing of the American government, not just one man's decision made alone. The founders put Congress in charge of declaring war for a reason. They had lived under a king. They knew what it meant when one man had the power to send people to their deaths based on his own judgment alone. They designed a system where that decision would require debate, deliberation, representation. The voices of the people, through their elected representatives, would have to be heard before the nation went to war. Whether that system has been honored by this president or any other is the most important question this moment in American history is asking, and the answer your Congress gives or refuses to give will define the relationship between the American people and their military for a generation. Let me bring everything we have decoded today into one clear picture. The United States is currently engaged in the largest military offensive in the Middle East in a generation. Iran's military has been devastated in 7 days, and simultaneously, right here at home, a constitutional battle is erupting over the most fundamental question in American democracy. Who decides when America goes to war? The Iran War Powers Resolution failed, but the debate it sparked did not. A group of senators are already pushing to keep Congress involved. The 60-day war powers clock is ticking, and every decision made in Washington over the next 2 months will either reinforce or erode the constitutional framework that governs the most powerful military force in the history of the world. You have a role in this, not just as a viewer, as a citizen, as a voter, as someone whose tax dollars fund every missile, every warship, every deployment, and whose family members wear the uniform. An informed citizen is the most powerful force in a democracy, and right now, your government needs more of them. If you are not subscribed to Senate Decoded, do it right now. Hit the bell. Share this video with someone in your life who thinks politics is too complicated to understand. It is not complicated. It just needs to be decoded. And drop a comment below right now. I want to know, do you think the president had the constitutional authority to strike Iran without congressional approval? Yes or no? And tell me why. I read every comment personally, and the best ones get featured in the next video. This story is not over. The Senate battle is just beginning, and we will be here every step of the way, breaking it all down for you. I am Senate Decoded, and I will see you in the next one.